Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Shift Handover. Here we are again in a slightly different surroundings, but we're still bringing you the same content as we always have been. Hope you're all keeping well. My name is Dan Sharp.
And I'm Mark Smith. Our new and improved surroundings, Dan.
New and improved. And we need to take a serious word of ourselves, don't we?
We do.
We do. So, a few episodes ago, some of you might remember, we really got on our soapbox about lack of uniformity, didn't we? And how teams don't look like teams when they don't dress the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to practice what we preach a little bit, don't we?
And the pre-brief and the debrief.
Yeah, the pre-brief and the debrief. And so we make mistakes too, guys. We make mistakes too. But we're all in this together. You know, we'll, I guess we're here now. We may as well just carry on doing what we're doing. And we'll learn from it.
Absolutely. It's all learning, isn't it?
It is. So, on today's episode, we're going to be looking at the mysterious world that not too many of us know about in close protection. I myself, like many of you, have never done close protection, but there are many myths around close protection. This mysterious world of security that us normal security operatives will just never be able to know what it's all about. Well, thankfully, Mark has worked in close protection, so today we can learn from the man himself what it is we don't know. So,
and if I don't know, then we'll have to research it, won't we?
Yeah. So I guess, Mark, one of the main myths I get told around CP close protection is about £4,000 for the license.
So, like a lot of training courses, the license cost is the same as the door, but it's the training.
Okay.
And like anything, you can go for a budget provider, or you can go for a more reputable high-end provider. Now, the reason why there's so much confusion is that with the door or security guarding, you know the syllabus is the same. So doesn't matter if you go high-end or not, you're getting that knowledge and that's it. The difference is with, and in the door world, your provider, your employer wants the SA license. The difference is with the close protection is that having the license is great, it's an essential, but that doesn't get you the foot in the door.
Okay.
So it depends where you've come from. So if you are ex-military, not all ex-military, but if you're high-end military, then it gives you obviously opens a lot of doors for you.
Yeah.
If you're a civilian, like me, I've never been in the military, it's a lot harder to access those doors. So the training varies. You say about £4,000. Yeah, that's about right. Okay. But you could go and spend 15, 20.
Yeah.
You could go to South Africa. You can go to another country and do some really high-end stuff. You can bolt on firearms training. So I went away and did firearms training. I went to France and did a course out there. Not that I ever wanted to use it, and I don't intend to. But if you're going to start doing work abroad, it looks good in your CV. It's a very competitive market, close protection officers. I don't know if you remember, but when the anti-piracy stuff came in, a lot of door staff were upgrading their licenses to close protection licenses so they could get on the ships, because there was a period of time where those guys might be getting £1,000 a day.
Yeah.
It's not like that now, but it really... So in answer, £4,000, yeah, you can get them cheaper, you can pay a lot more. But the people that know, the people that are going to employ you, the people that want to employ you, they know what they're looking for. And if they want, gold star level training, then they're not going to accept anything else.
Yeah, so I guess this is the area of the industry where the training provider really does matter, because if you're going to work in static, if you're going to work in a door supervisor role, it doesn't really matter who's trained you as long as they're recognised by the SIA and you've got the badge. The employer necessarily isn't going to go and see who trained you before offering you a position. But are you saying that in the close protection world, that's very different? Potential employers look at who trained you and what?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. You've got to go into that world with a cast iron reputation, and if you haven't got that through experience, then they will go through the training. Because a lot of these guys, when they leave the army and stuff, they get offered training to get them back into society.
Yeah.
So they will, the government, the armed forces, whatever they call it, will pay for them to get trained.
Yeah.
So they get good training. And again, if you was ex-police or high-end police, imagine if you was a firearms officer and you came out of the force and you got into close protection. Your training is very high already. Yeah. So if they come along and they've got all that level of training, and then someone who's just jumped off the doors does it, there's a big discrepancy, just a big difference. So
yeah.
So yes, they really look into the training.
Yeah, one other thing that has always left me fascinated, and again, up until I met you, I never really actually spoke to anyone who's done close protection firsthand. It's always been, my friend did CP and he told me this.
Yeah.
So, and I guess that's the security industry in general though, isn't it? He said, she said. But one thing that's always fascinated me is there's a tactical driving element. Is that correct? Or is that just something I've made up or heard?
There's a driving element that's compulsory.
Yeah.
So they take you out on a driving a track, and you have to learn to disembark the car, get back in the car, transfer your client from one car to another. There's a lot involved.
Okay.
There's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So I guess a lot of the myths I've heard are proven to be true.
Yeah.
Someone did say to me that actually, unless you are ex-military, there are just no job opportunities out there.
Yeah, it's very difficult, mate. Yeah, very difficult.
And actually, the life of a close protection operative is very similar to that of a military personnel, because it's same procedures, same shift rotations. But I guess that's more of the on the ships, the anti-piracy stuff, isn't it?
Depends who you work for. I mean, the one thing I'll say about close protection, it's very much a single man's job. So what I mean is, if you've got a family or you've got a partner, and it's a tough industry to be in, because the money, and then the day you do it for money, the money is in London. It's working for wealthy Arab families and things like that.
Yeah.
But of course, to do that, they want you to live in. So you might be on a 12-hour, 14-hour shift. You're living with them. You're taking their kids to school for them. You're running shopping errands. It's not all flamboyant.
Yeah.
Of course, you might be driving a nice car around central London. But they're long shifts. And depending on the wealth of that family or that client, will depend on how many of you there is. Locally, where we live in the south, very little close protection work.
Okay.
However, there is a requirement. For example, a lot of the wealthy properties, sandbanks, things like that.
Yeah.
They might want residential security while they're away. Footballers, business owners. So yeah, there is a requirement, but you are, and the other thing to bear in mind is, when we laugh and we joke and we say that like security officers will sit on their phones and watch our YouTube, which is great. You don't get that luxury with close protection, because you've got to be on your game all the time, and you are, like anything, you are only as good as your last job.
Yeah.
If you're getting paid good money, and they do get paid good money, but one little slip up and that's you done. And bear in mind, it's a word of mouth industry. So you screw up, it's not very easy to get into another another job, another client. Whereas with a door, okay, yeah, you find another door job tomorrow because there's such an outcry of staff,
Yeah.
shortage. There's no shortage with close protection.
Yeah. So, would you approach the client directly from a self-employed point of view, or are you subcontracted through a company and there's only 2 or 3 CP companies in the UK? What does that look like?
Well, I personally would go direct, or I would be approached direct. But, you know, I've been doing security for a long time, so I wouldn't expect that to be the case for everyone. There are jobs that I get which are subcontracted, or that a client has gone through a national security provider that don't necessarily specialise in close protection. You know, there's some very big companies out there, as you know. And then they might ring up and say, look, I've been asked to do this. Like I had a phone call a few months ago about looking after an NBA player who's coming to England for a week. But it was through a guarding company, a company that don't do close protection. But because it was so well recognised, you know, they then subcontracted it to me. Well, I didn't actually do it. I couldn't do it. But they offered it to me. So a lot of it will come via that. Or the other option is you may get, for example, the NHS may say that we need security for what they call violent patients.
Okay.
And the risk assessment from the powers that be might say, well, we need trained close protection officers for that. You and I would know that there's probably not a lot of difference between, for the role they want, between close protection and door supervisor. But the legislation may say they need close protection licensed officers. Okay. So there is it's a very wide, but very vastly ranging industry.
Okay. And when you're talking to a client or you're talking to the company that's subcontracting out the work to yourself, how involved are you in the risk assessing, the procedures, how you're going to operate, or is that dictated to you? The risk the risk assessment's been done for you once you meet the client. Do you kind of, is it your job to kind of see what risk there is actually out there posed to this person?
Yeah, it's 100% down to you.
Yeah,
it's 100% my job. You know, that is why so close protection. I always say the door security is thankless. We know the benefits, but the end user doesn't appreciate what goes into it. But close protection is very different because they've come to you for a real reason. They've come to you because they have a genuine threat or concern to their safety, their business, their family. So if they've got to the point where they need to ask for us to support, then they want our advice.
Yeah. And
at that level, if you offer a professional risk assessment advice, if they don't accept that, then they're not worth working for, because it's also our safety.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going into a hostile environment or an environment where we know there's a threat, a serious threat, if they're high-end people, you know, the more wealth, the more reward, the more a criminal or a baddie will risk. You know, so they need to take that professional advice on board, or I would advise not doing it.
Yeah. Has there ever been situations where you've approached a potential client or you're in discussions and you said, I can take on this work for you, but I need 2 or 3 extra people, or I need these resources, and the potential client's gone, no, I'm just paying you to look after me, I'm not going to give you anything else, and kind of expecting you to achieve an outcome under-resourced? Have you had those kind of conversations, or does that not happen so much?
No, it doesn't happen so much. I mean, it certainly will get kind of muted, but again, normally when you're dealing with the high-end stuff, a lot of time you're dealing with PAs or you're dealing with assistants. Okay. Because the he or she at the top of the food chain probably doesn't want to deal with the logistics of their security.
Yeah.
You know, they've got a personal assistant or a secretary that deals with it. I mean, yeah, there's certainly there's been situations where, you know, I would think to myself, well, I need a bit of extra support here. And they might go, well, do we really need it? Or there's not much. But ultimately, if I'm saying you need it, then there's a real reason. Because I don't want to bring guys or girls in which I don't need. And of course, I'd love to think that I could do it all myself. So if I'm asking for that, there's a real reason.
Yeah.
Often it'll be maybe because of an area that you're going into, or if you're driving the client. There are clients out there that will expect you to drive and do security. Well, that's okay, but when there is a problem, I can't drive, get out the car, deal with this, deal with that, and still be driving around central London.
Yeah.
So there are times when you need that second person.
Okay.
Or the other thing is, Dan, sometimes you get what I call the VIP treatment, where someone doesn't have much of a threat, but they want to be seen.
Okay.
Because they have security. So they don't really have any threats. It's just a case of they want to look the part. So they get driven around and they've got someone with them.
Okay, that's interesting. Has your close protection work taken you abroad a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in Africa, Cape Verde, Paris, the States. You will remember, because you're a boxing nut, you'll remember Tony Thompson, the guy that fought David Price some years back. I travelled with him doing his security for his wife.
Okay.
We went to Paris, all over the place.
Yeah.
Because basically he'd been to the UK, fought David Price. David Price was like the up and coming hero, the AJ of the world. Tony Thompson came to Liverpool, beat David Price in his backyard, and the amount of abuse Tony got and his wife got. So I started doing the security for them, and then he loved. They appreciated it so much that they kept me and a guy. I think you remember Jason White. Remember Jason White? You may remember him.
Maybe.
Probably very much saw him. But yeah, we went to Paris. We looked after them there, and my work's really taken me around. I've loved that about it.
Yeah, and I have, for those of you who follow your social media posts, you have rubbed shoulders with a lot of boxers, particularly. How much of that is from your boxing affiliation? How much of that is actually you providing a close protection service?
Well, the funny thing is the close protection to the boxers, i.e. Ricky Hatton and Frank Bruno. Yeah, that's really what got me into it. That started me off. Because although I'd been doing security for quite some time, they were opportunities that came to me. And this is why I say, if you're not military trained, it's a hard industry to get into. You need to have a stroke of luck or an introduction. And they were my introduction, stroke of luck, because, I got the opportunity to look after Ricky. And off the back of that, met Frank Bruno, and it brought me into that boxing fraternity. Yeah. And I ended up doing a lot of security for them. Ricky, Frank Bruno, lots of others. Evander Holyfield.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, did some security for Evander Holyfield. And because of that gave me that push to say, do you know what? This is an industry I like doing. And it got me quite embedded into it. And they recommend you. Frank Bruno, doing the security for Frank Bruno really opened a lot of doors. Ricky did, but Frank really did, because he was doing so many functions, so many events, that you're meeting agents and, again, high-end venues. Yeah. So, yeah, they were a massive part of it.
Yeah, no, and how often... And I've got one boxer in mind for this. We'll speak about it in a minute. But how often is it where you're providing security for a celebrity, and you're trying to do your job correctly, but actually it's that celebrity that's causing the problems or causing the potential risk to themselves? Yeah. What right have you got to actually step into the client and say, don't put yourself in a position, don't put me in this position?
So I'll give you an example. A great example of that springs to my mind. Shannon Briggs.
Yes, that's exactly where I was.
Right, and I love the guy dearly. I think he's amazing. And I actually touched base with him last week when we was out in the States. So he was amazing, right? I had a interesting relationship. I was managing his tour. He came to the UK.
Yeah.
It all happened because of a conversation that I had with him in New York, outside a nightclub.
Okay.
I was in New York for the Brian Jennings Vladimir Klitschko fight. It was at Madison Square Garden. Shannon Briggs was there. And if you remember, he was desperately trying to get the Klitschko fight.
Yes.
So everywhere Vladimir went, Shannon went.
On the paddleboard.
Paddleboard, yeah. So I'd seen all this. It was hilarious.
It was.
But anyway, he turned up at this weigh-in. And I was like, Shannon, I said, you probably don't remember me. I met you a couple of years ago in Cardiff at a WBC convention. He was like, yeah, I remember. I don't think he did. But the point is, he opened the conversation. And I said, what are you doing now? You know, you running around after Vladimir. You know, I don't think you're going to get the Vladimir fight, even though he was close. But what are you doing? And he was chatting. And now, at that time, the UK was the hotbed of UK. Well, it is now. You heavyweight boxing. AJ was on the cusp of becoming a world champion. I think Fury had already become world champion, but you had all these big names. And anyway, he said, "Look, come and see me tonight. I'm going to a nightclub. He's doing like a hosting his nightclub." So I said, "Yeah, definitely." No, I wasn't sure if he'd be there. Anyway, I went down there. Goes to this nightclub. He was there. We had a good chat. He's such a loud, wild character that you're trying to talk to him, and his attention's everywhere. And I said, "Look, you need to come to the UK, Shannon." And he was like, "Yeah. Well, what can you do?" Straight away, what can you do? What can you do? What you can do? And I said, "Well, I can get you in front of the people you need to see." Now, I didn't know Frank. I've met him. I didn't know Frank Warren. I didn't know Eddie Hearn. Knew who they were. I didn't know who they were. He said, "Can you get me in front of it?" I said, "Yes, I can." Yeah, I can do that.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, and but I had enough knowledge of the boxing and then people to know that I could somehow get him. And I also knew that at the end of the day, he's such a big character. He's a two-time heavyweight champion of the world. He sells himself.
Yeah, he does.
All I've got to do is point him and get him and arrange the appointments. So I hoped, anyway. So, anyway, we've been chatting for months and months, and I thought he's not coming over, and it's consuming my time. Anyway, he rings up one day, he says, "Mark, I'm coming. Let's set it up. I'm gonna come for 2 weeks. Let's do it. Let's make an impact." I said, "Okay, definite." You know, so we got everything set. Flights were booked. No expense to me. He had an investor, but I had to do the legwork. Anyway, he turns up, Heathrow Airport, and we're on. We get him booked into Box Nation, Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn. I went to Eddie Hearn's house, which is his childhood house, which is now his offices. We went there, got him on IFL TV with Coogan Cassius. That was a godsend because Coogan followed him everywhere.
Yeah, I remember.
And Coogan got great viewing figures.
I remember.
We took him everywhere. Anyway, cut a long story short, in answer to your question, we went to the AJ. Who did he fight for the world title? I can't remember his name now. Charles Martin.
Yeah.
Charles Martin. We went to the Charles Martin fight. I said to Shannon, I said, "Look, let's get you ringside." He goes, "No." He said, "I just want to be a man of the people," which was a lovely thing about him. Okay. By now, his Let's Go Champ campaign was big. I mean, he was getting 3,000 or 4,000 followers on his Instagram every day, every time he went out. People loved him. He was great to be around, the energy. Yeah. Anyway, so it was at the O2 Arena. We turned up at the O2 Arena. Because he didn't want to go through the normal back passage and VIP, he went through the crowd. Mate, he was mobbed. There was me and another guy at the time. He was absolutely mobbed. so to the point where people putting their arms around him for a photo. They loved him, but it was hard work. I'm literally pulling people off. Yeah. And they're boxing fans. They're not little old ladies. They're big, hefty guys. So I'm like, give the guys some space. All right. Anyway, we sit down, watch the fight. And I remember there was two things that stuck out to me. AJ knocked Charles Martin clean out that night. I think it was the second or third round. Shannon had been going on and on about fighting the top UK heavyweights. And I remember stood there, and because Shannon didn't want to be the VIP area, this guy shouted, he said, "You can't fucking do that." He was rude. Shannon was so friendly. He said, "What do you mean?" He says, "What have you done in there? You can't do that. You get in there with AJ, he'll knock you clean out." I thought, "Oh, okay." And I could see Shannon like starting to flash. And I literally put him out, and he's a 6'4" guy. Yeah. I put my arm around his waist, and it was really weird. I said, "Let's go, champ. Let's go." He said, "All right, Mark. And he was growling. I thought, "Come on, pull him away." Anyway.
Save that poor guy's life.
I did, but you can imagine the scene, though. If he had grabbed him, it would have been a big brawl.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, as we left the arena, the last thing I say about it is, as we left the arena, he said, "I want to walk through the front." I said, "Son, it's so busy. It's too much." He said, "Mark, can we walk through the front?" I said, "You can, but I don't think it's a good idea. Let's just go." He had a driver. "Let's just go through the back, wave at people wherever we go." Nah. And he didn't even say anything to me. He just said, "No, let's go through the front." Walk front. Mate, we had over 1,000 people literally all over him. And in the end, he said, "Mark, get me out of here. Get me out of here." I was like, whoa, that was no mean feat. If he had listened to me, we'd have been fine. And as I say, it's not a diss on him because he loved the fans, and it was an amazing thing. But yeah, I mean, if that was any other client, they'd listen, they'd want an easy life. But he knew he was here for 2 weeks. He wanted to get as much publicity as possible, and he did it. But they were like pulling on his shirt. I think his shirt ripped, and they just loved him. But it could have been a very different situation.
Yeah. And if anything had gone wrong, thankfully, obviously it didn't, and it all turned out great.
Yeah.
But if anything had gone wrong and Shannon Briggs would have been arrested for lumping a fan or hurt himself and it affected his boxing career, would that have impacted your reputation in the close protection world?
It would have impacted it. Now, in my defence, it was a grey area because I was like tour managing him, security for him. So Shannon and I never had an actual sit-down agreement that said, right, my job tonight is security. And we did bring security in for certain events. But on that night, because of the nature of what it was, he didn't really need a security team. But he flipped the script by saying he wanted to go through the crowds. But you're not to know that. The millions of people watching TV aren't to know that. They would have looked at home and gone, that security didn't have a clue what he was doing.
How many times have you seen a story of a celebrity doing something wrong, getting hurt, and the first thing that people say is, the people around him are not looking after him?
Absolutely. It's easy. Because no one knows what really goes into it. But yeah, so he was don't get me wrong, we laughed about it after, but Shannon said, in future, you need to take on board what I say. And he was like, "Yeah, Mark, yes, Mark, you're right, Mark. And next time, Mark, we get 3 or 4 security, Mark." I said, "No, so you still want to go through? I can tell you what you're thinking."
It's not going to stop 10,000 people wanting to jump on him if they want to.
No, but it's who he is, and that's how he is. So
I remember because I think that was happening around the time we met.
Yeah,
the first time, and I was, obviously following you on Facebook and stuff like that. And I remember looking at, obviously, you and Shannon Briggs on social media, thinking, because I'm a boxing fan, as you know.
Absolutely.
I was like, I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that. And then I see what Shannon Briggs was doing. Do I really want to get punched in the face by Vladimir Klitschko? Probably not.
Well, I'll tell you what's really funny about that, right? His quest, right, was to get David Haye in the ring.
Yeah, you went to his gym, didn't you?
Well, yeah. So he wanted David, and he was calling him out on the press. He was doing it everywhere. "I want David Haye, David Haye." And we'd been to Buckingham Palace, not to go in, but Shannon went to Buckingham Palace, and we'd got Sky there. Sky News came down. They'd been tipped off. We tipped them off. So Sky Sports come down, and he's there. The police had already said, you got to move on. You can't stand outside the Queen's residence and shout, let's go churn. But he'd been there long enough to get the footage. Anyway, he said, I want David Hay, I want Tyson Fury, I want AJ, I want all these guys. And he did his job well. He's a marketing machine. But from that, people then were like messaging him saying, well, I know where David is. David's at his gym, David's here, David's there. And Shannon put a thing out. He said, if you know the whereabouts of David A, call this number. And he actually bought a second phone that he would answer the phone to fans. So they were like, David's here, David's there, man. And anyway, we hopped in the taxi. And I said to Shannon, I said, when you see that, if you see David, what are you actually going to do? He said, I'm going to dog him. I'm going to intimidate him. I'm going to get him to react. So he has to fight. He has to sign the deal. So of course, Dan, now I'm thinking to myself, I've seen David when they put it on him. Remember when Derek Chisora put it on him? He bloody, he lumped him.
For those people who aren't boxing fans, David Hay wasn't the biggest heavyweight, but of all the heavyweights around at that time, he's probably the one I would want to get punched in the face by least.
I always used to say that. He's 6'3", very, very powerful, very confident, and didn't take prisoners lightly. So we're driving to this gym. It's in the Arches in London, and it dawns on me. I'm like, right, okay, I'm here to do Shannon's security. He means business. He'll do. Shannon's from Brooklyn. He's from the Bronx.
Yeah.
He doesn't care who he offends. He doesn't go out to offend people, but he'll have it with anyone.
Yeah.
And he wants to make the news because he wants to fight, and he knows this will sell. David Hay always had like a love-hate relationship. He was very, very good, but he's a pretty boy. Some people love him. Some people hate him. It's a bit like Floyd Mayweather.
Yes.
They love him, but they love to see him lose, or like a Chris Eubank.
Yeah.
Because he's too perfect. So anyway, we're driving along, and the taxi pulls up, and I'm like, well, that's his gym. And he's like, yeah, Mark, let's go get him. I'm like, what happens now? In my mind, David Hay opens the door and says, what the fuck do you want? Shannon's going for it. I've got to jump in the middle. And we're talking about two heavyweight boxing world champions who've got some serious dig in them.
And the likelihood David Hay's going to have his people around him. If he's in his gym, he's going to be surrounded by his sparring partners. You've probably got 3 or 4 sparring partners that are quite willing to get arrested for him and let him slip out the back door. And
absolutely. So it was all like compounding on my mind. I'm like, this could be the end here. I'm here for Shannon, but so as we got to I said, Shannon, just hold on. What are you actually going to do? Are you actually going to put it on him? If he comes at you, are you going to? And that's when I saw a different side. That's when I saw what a marketing machine. He said, Mark, I'm not getting in a fight with him. He said, even if he puts it on me, I'll take a step back. He said, but I will dog him. I will get to that point where we get the controversy. He said, I'm not stupid. He said, I don't want to get arrested in London. An American, come here, loud, brash, bullshit guy. I don't want that. He said, I won't get a boxing license. He said, but just let me do the shouting, screaming, maybe a bit of pushing and shoving. But I know if they're at breaking point, I said, okay, but just bear in mind, David's breaking point is pretty fine.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's banging on the door. It's all on YouTube somewhere.
I've seen it, yeah.
He's banging on the door, and he said, David, come out. David wasn't there. He'd either been tipped off and decided, I don't want to be there, or he just wasn't there that day at all. So we got a lucky escape. But he did catch up with him at a few other events that we were at. But by then, I think David had kind of realised it was a good marketing opportunity for him as well.
Yeah.
And because they were going to fight, they provisionally agreed it.
Yeah. So, we could sit here and talk boxing.
I know.
But
you see how it's great, it entwines
Yeah.
security in the boxing. It's brilliant.
yeah. But in terms of close protection work outside of the boxing world, what
Yeah.
other experiences, what other celebrities have you worked with? I don't want you to give any secrets away, because I know you're not that type of person. I don't want you to give any confidences away. But is there anything, any work you've done that might, may interest myself or the viewers?
I mean, yeah, I've worked with such a vast array of clients. When One Direction won X Factor or The Voice, whichever one was X Factor, I think, we not just me, but I was part of a team for this, but we were looking after them in the early days before they went sky high.
Okay.
They were just, as I call it, kids.
Yeah.
But I worked with them a lot. They were fun to work with. Leona Lewis, did lots with Peter Andre and Katie Price.
Oh, did
Always
ya?
Controversial. But lots of work with them. Movie stars, Michael Caine, Jesse Metcalfe, who was one of the stars from Desperate Housewives.
Okay.
But he was a good guy. So many. Vanilla Ice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, did a job looking after Vanilla Ice. Loads of stuff, mate. But the Katie Price stuff, Peter Andre, they were regular clients.
Were you around them? Were you working with them when they went through their separation?
No, they'd already gone through their separation.
Okay.
Which was interesting because they would talk about the other, and obviously.
So you're working for both after they separated?
Yeah, both after they separated. More Katie, to be honest.
Okay, so in situations like that, obviously there's a very public divorce or a very public feud between two clients who you're working with. Are you obliged to sign any confidentiality agreements?
Oh yes, you always have to do NDAs.
Yeah.
Always have to sign non-disclosures.
Okay, and other than obviously the impact to your reputation, but what are the penalties for breaking those confidentiality agreements?
Well, contractually, you can get fined a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends what it is.
Okay.
But let's say, for example, you're doing something on a movie set.
Yeah.
Or looking after an A-lister movie star, or even doing close protection for the movie set.
Okay.
All these movie sets, Sony, Paramount, Pinewood, they'll have security. Imagine they're recording, I don't know, Mark Ruffalo doing a Marvel film, and you record a bit of it, and that gets out there. You're talking about $100 million film.
Yeah.
You're screwed. You're never working again.
Yeah.
And you couldn't afford to pay the court costs.
No.
But there's some serious.
The actors even have to ask permission themselves what they're allowed to film, aren't
Absolutely.
they? Yeah.
The way they roll out the publicity is so well managed.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say about with these people now, not the behind the closed doors, but the public ones. So like Katie Price, Leona Lewis, they would do book signings and speaking events. Of course, now you got people videoing it. It's on YouTube, very, very quick. Anyway, so as long as you don't reveal or say stuff, you're inevitably going to be out there.
Yeah. Do you have any responsibility for stopping other people recording these celebrities or doing it? Is that ever part of your role?
There's times when you may, it's definitely your role. Very hard to do.
Yeah.
We did, me and my friend Mark, we did a job at the time for, you may not remember him, but his name was Johnson B. Harry. He was an army guy he was a tank driver, he got shot in the head. He had a brain injury, but he got married, and really lovely man. He got the Victoria Cross, military hero, national treasure. He got married in London, and the wedding had been the rights to film the wedding had been bought by, I think it was Hello magazine. So, because of that, the wife couldn't have her dress on view before the wedding, because Hello had, they had the rights to it. Yeah. So when she left her residence where she got ready, she had to wear like a black cloak over her wedding dress. And we had to manage that. If anyone saw her in that wedding dress and the images got leaked before, that would have been, they would have not got paid a lot of money. And that money probably paid for the wedding. So yes, there are. Or there's times when you might come out of a nightclub, for example, and it may not be the fact that they've told you they don't want images, but you know that for their integrity, they shouldn't be seen. Or, mate, crude as it sounds, all photographers want that sneaky pic of a nipple slip or upskirt, or it sounds
it's awful, but it's true. Yeah,
but that's what they'll do. So there's ways around that. You can get the little strobe lights. You can get, you can come out of a club and use one of them, and if that's flashing in their eyes, the cameras are not going to work. And there's little tactics, but I always found ultimately the best way was to converse with photographers, converse with people, and say, look, you'll get your images as long as you do it, professionally. You wait. I'll make sure they come to you. You agree it with the client. They'll come. They'll spend 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 30 seconds with you. You'll get your images, but respect their privacy, and you'll get them. But unfortunately, a lot of them don't, and they just want to get the best they can, but then they lose out because they won't do business with them.
Yeah. So part of your role is to negotiate with whether they're paparazzi or members of the public.
Yeah.
To get the celebrity from, say, an event to their car. Part of your role is to negotiate with the public and get them through that way as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Does the celebrity kind of give you authority to negotiate on their behalf of who you will speak to, who you won't speak to? Or do you have to check first? What does that look like?
Yeah, you need to check first, because some of them want the images. And again, they're all different.
Yeah.
There's a lot of... one thing I've learned in this industry is that a lot of upcoming celebrities, especially like reality TV stars, they want the images.
Yeah.
They want to say they didn't, but they did want them.
Yeah.
Because it's all publicity. They always say no publicity is bad publicity, all publicity, whatever. So, yeah, it's a tough one. Unless they've got a real reason not to be seen, most of them do want the publicity.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have an agreement with them. But it depends if you're the sole CP operative. Often you're one of a team.
Okay.
So you might have someone else that deals with it, or again, the PA or the assistant to them will say, "Look, this is how it's going to be," or the manager or the agent. Yeah. It's very rare that these celebs, rock up, go around their own. Normally they're on a time frame because they're doing a book signing, or they've got to be at a public speaking event or a premiere. So you're dealing with the agent a lot more.
So do you build a lot of good relationships with these clients directly then, or is most of your work through the assistant, through the PA, through the agent?
You build a great relationship. I've formed some really nice relationships and great working relationships and personal relationships with many of the people that I've worked for.
Yeah.
I always found, Katie Price, very controversial always, but always had a really good relationship with her. And, a few years ago, I was going to bring her to Bournemouth to do like an audience with event and stuff. Didn't happen, but you do. And the Frank Bruno is a prime example.
Yeah.
I like to class Frank Bruno as a friend of mine. I've got his number. I can call him up if I need to. That's all through the security.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So reality TV guys, boxers. What I am interested in, actually, and I don't know how much experience you've had with this, but with the changing political climate, the world is changing very much on a political scale is what it would be like to manage the protection of a well-known politician.
So I've never done any political CP. I think that they all need it personally.
Yeah.
Whatever your political views are, they need it now more than ever.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't have it. I know that.
Wow.
And I think they should. But it's only really, to be honest, most of them don't. It's only the big players that have it.
Yeah. And I guess if you were to take on that role, you'd really have to look at that risk assessment, wouldn't you?
Yeah, massively. And the benefit of those roles, though, is that they will do exactly what you tell them to do because they know, and they know the threat to them.
Yeah.
You can look online, can't you? You can, especially in this current climate, you see politicians going into towns and they're booed and heckled, and it only takes one person to throw a brick or even worse, a bottle of acid or something like that.
That's the thing. How many times have we seen an egg thrown, and that egg
Yeah.
could have been,
Could be a lot worse, couldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess going into that role, is that work you would take on at this stage in your life?
I absolutely would take it on. Yeah, I would take it on. I mean, it's all, I look at it, it's risk and reward. It's, what are you paying for it? Reality is, the good thing about that kind of work, you would have instant police support, and you'd have also access to intelligence.
Yeah.
So I can't get intelligence on, who's going to want to follow Katie Price. But if you're a major politician, you've got MI5 and all these people. They study, they do their homework. So you've got a lot of access to information.
Social media trends, that kind of thing.
Social media trends, yeah. If you're Keir Starmer, there's places you definitely ain't going to want to be going.
Yeah.
And I don't need to tell him that because he knows, the rest of the team around him would know that. So,
yeah.
Also when you have political leaders like, the most protected man in the world is Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, look what happens when he comes over. You've got 60 convoy of security and paramedics and. Yeah, it depends on who they are, doesn't it? The level of security.
So if you were to provide security for a celebrity in the UK, you said you've been abroad to places like South Africa, America. How does your role change when you're going into a country where firearms are legalised? Do you completely change the way you work? Do you completely change how you operate? Is it less communication, more communication, less planning, more planning? What does that look like?
So as I said I did, I became firearms trained. I have no interest in using firearms. It's not something I want to do, and I never have. To me, if you're going to carry that, then you need to be an ex-forces, an ex-military specialist. Not my thing. I know my lane and I stay in that. However, it doesn't mean that, like you said, you don't go to countries where you need to have that. So in answer to your question, I would always use local knowledge. So, for example, if I was to go into South Africa or a place which I don't know very well, the first thing I would do is engage local knowledge. So local security providers that can assist. People that can translate. Trying to think of examples. I remember going into a job when the Ebola crisis was on, which was probably about, probably must be nearly 8-9 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I knew that in that area where we were, it was a major thing. the last thing I wanted to do was contract that, a deadly disease. But we were there to do a job which was important. So we literally would engage with a local security provider who, if you put them here now, would be useless. But their value of having them as an intermediate was priceless. They made the job that I was doing so much more manageable. Without them, I'd have really struggled.
Yeah.
Because their knowledge of the area, their communication skills. You know, if you're going into a town or a city that you're not sure of, and you've got a major problem, you need to find the best security provider. They love it because they're used to manning, concierges and that. And suddenly, this British, bodyguard who they think's James Bond, because everyone thinks, you're James Bond, whatever. They're now helping, and you know what it's like, Dan. You work in a nightclub, you have security, and then suddenly they've got, a celeb doing a 20-minute segment, and well, could you look after, whoever it is, and suddenly, I'm not security anymore. I'm the bodyguard.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of inflated ego. So as long as you treat them well, local knowledge is the most important thing, because you cannot. I can't emphasize enough how off-putting it is and potentially intimidating when you don't know where the police station is. You don't know even how to contact. You don't know the approach from the police. If I need support, let's say you have some kind of convoy or you're chauffeuring, and the police pull you over. Do they take bribes? Do they want to be talking to me? Do they think I'm all that? And if you've got someone local who might be very, just a minimum paid guy or girl, that interaction, that middleman is so important.
Yeah.
So and then again with the firearms, you can employ people to do that.
Yeah, and I guess even if you don't want to carry a firearm, if you're going to be working in countries where lots of people do carry firearms, it has to be incorporated into your risk assessment, right?
Oh, absolutely. When you talk about America and stuff like that, all those operatives out there of carrying guns, with the exception of some states, but they carry them. That's their everyday life to them.
I know.
So you then it's like you then become, you're not just a security, you're now overseeing it. You're now another level higher. You're managing everything.
Yeah, and you've subcontracted a lot of that work out to other people, and you're just overseeing the work.
Yeah, you subcontract it out.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing close protection work for, Mark?
2010 I started, when I started doing the rookie stuff, and that's when I took it more seriously.
Yeah.
16 years.
And as you said, it's not a job if you're a family man, but do you have an end goal in sight? Is there an exit plan from your close protection life? Is it something you just don't really know when you're going to finish?
So I don't do half as much of it as I used to. I get offered work quite a lot. Most of it I turn down, or I will pass forward to someone else. Sometimes I can just forward it to someone else and make a few quid out of it.
Yeah.
As an introduction fee. There are some things that I'll do. Like I literally yesterday got asked to do some CP for a film premiere at Leicester Square in July. I'll do that because that, for me, thinking smart, is good publicity. It's also very useful networking for me because of other things that I do. Yeah. So I'll do that. It's pretty low risk and not too much drama. But a lot of stuff I turn it down now, mate, or I'll pass it forward to someone else. Because the other thing is, I do believe that you only get so many chances. We only have so many lives. And if you're doing it all the time, the threat level, the liability, the risk of something serious happening is going to happen, especially now in this day and age. It's getting quite scary times up there.
So how many? Obviously, we're in the Bournemouth and Poole area, but say from the south coast to say Southampton down to Weymouth, how many close protection operatives would you say are in this area? People who are local, who you could pass work off to. Are there loads of them?
There's a lot more than you think.
Yeah.
There's a lot more you think. By nature of what we do and who I am, whatever, we're quite high profile really, but there's a lot out there which, you wouldn't even know who they are. They just keep themselves to themselves. And, there's quite a big network, especially as Poole is the home of the SBS and things like that. Yeah. And a lot of these guys, when they leave the forces, they go into close protection, whether it's on the ships or looking over. And like I say, and rightly so, they get an instant foot in the door because of their incredible experience they've got. So there's a lot down here, yeah. There's a lot.
I think everyone wouldn't be shocked to realise that the close protection work is the most well-paid area of the industry, but it's also the highest threat to yourself. It's the riskiest part of the security industry there is. Have there been instances where your safety or your life has been at risk? Have there been those situations where you've come out of it and thought, God, I was lucky?
Yeah, so I went into I was part of a 4-man team that went to another country. We looked after a client who, a very wealthy man, he wanted to show off his wealth in a poor area, and he had he had a £500,000 watch on, and I remember it so well because I remember thinking to myself, where we're about to go, that could feed the whole town. And I remember going into this little town area. He went into a bar, and after about 5 minutes, across the road, these pickup trucks started to pull up, and these pickup trucks had locals in them.
So where was this? In the UK?
No, it's in somewhere in Africa.
Okay.
And they're all locals. Very, very poor people. Very poor people. And there were 4 of us looking after this gentleman. 2 of us outside, 2 were inside with him. And it wasn't like some fancy, smart Sandbanks type restaurant. It was like it was just a downtrodden ghetto type bar. So when this guy turned up, he had 2 Range Rovers. When he turned up, they were like, oh wow, but they weren't impressed. They were like, fucking, you're a disgusting individual. I'm not saying he was, but to them, these people couldn't eat after them. So, so these pickups started turning up, and I'm not one to exaggerate. So I say it as it is, but I would not be exaggerating by saying there was probably about 25, 30 guys pulled up. Now we're talking about the other side of the road. We are 2 white men, 2 security, with 2 more inside with this client, and these guys are all outside. 25, 30 black men. Now, I know that I knew what was going on. I could tell the interest was starting to build on this guy inside. Now, it wouldn't have put, because of where we were, the location we were, it wouldn't have put anything past, I wouldn't put past anyone to take a machete and chop this guy's arm off to take that watch or nick the cars. You're suddenly very, very quickly outnumbered. So at that point, and this takes me back to my point earlier about locals, if I ring the police and say, we've got a situation, can we get some police support? A lot of these countries, these police are earning less than the locals. The perk is that they get a police car, and half of them are corrupt. You know, you probably know of people where they've been pulled over in Brazil and stuff and said, well, you know, give us everything you've got or we're going to put you in the prison cell for the night. You know what I mean? So by calling them, we don't know who's going to turn up. Are they going to turn up and think, well, you shouldn't be here anyway, you're out of your depth, and support them? So I remember saying to my colleagues, we've got to get him out. Now, there was a 4-man team. I wasn't the lead on the team. So you always have a lead operative. And I remember going in and saying, look, we've got to get him out of here. We've got to get him back to... Because he had a safe area. He had a big property. He was safe there. We've got to get him out because something's going to go down in a minute. Yeah. And they're like... And he was like, no, I've paid for you to be here for this. You know, I'm not going. Anyway, he realised in the end that he needed to go. But I remember getting into those cars with, I think we probably had 25, 30 seconds before something serious went down. And again, they could have been armed, they could have had guns, machetes, could have anything. So yeah, there's been a few times, but that was one that always stuck out in my mind as potentially life-ending. I remember that. And no one would have known. It could have been covered up, swept up. No one would have ever talked about it because it was from a tourist point of view. They would not have wanted that. This area, it was an island. This area was, you know, a major tourist spot. But the tourists were supposed to stay on their complexes. They weren't supposed to go into town.
Okay.
This guy just wanted to big up a bit, show off.
And when you hear the stories like that and you've been there, you know, this is first-hand account. Yeah. It's very, very real. And it you know, I can imagine you had a very difficult night's sleep that night.
Well, I remember going back to the apartment we were staying in, and we did a debrief, and I actually said, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't feel comfortable tonight, I didn't feel safe. And thankfully, the other guys there were like, yeah, no, we all felt that. So the next day, we went to the client and said, look, well, I didn't, but the team leader went to the client and said, look, we think this is great, we appreciate the work, but you've got to take our advice seriously. You cannot do that again. Yeah. If you want to do that, we'll forgo the money, we're getting on a plane back to England. And he was like, no, I understand, it was stupid. Yeah. So thankfully he listened. But yeah, very scary, mate. I'll be the first to admit it. I'm not too proud to say, because when you're in a situation like that, we're not carrying guns.
No.
All we got is this.
Yeah.
You know, and that ain't going to get us too far. Might be able to take 2 or 3 on, but not when there's 30 of them.
Speak for yourself, Mel. I'll be that extra, and I'm joking. So if anyone was to look to get into the close protection world, someone who is thinking about leaving the military, leaving the police, or just someone who's thinking of coming into it, what advice would you give them?
I mean, if they've got all that experience, the police, the military, definitely, get your training and go for one of the big providers. Head for somewhere like London. You know, you can get some good residential security for mostly the Arabs. They've got so much money that they'll employ you, take you on in-house. And it's actually a really nice lifestyle because most of it is chaperoning, taking the wife shopping, dropping the kids to school. You become part of their family. They give you lots of tips. And it's all right. If you're not from that background, then the answer is, mate, you've got to work hard at it. You've got to earn your reputation. And I said I was very fortunate that I had because of the boxing stuff. But even then, I had to work very hard. Yeah. Because I didn't have that. I had a security background, but didn't have close protection.
It's a word of mouth game, I imagine.
Word of mouth. Yeah. But once you start getting out there, and like I always say, you're only as good as your last job. And when they are high profile, everything is on YouTube, everything's on social media. So if you screw up, or someone, gets, I remember doing a job with Katie Price once, someone threw a bloody, a mobile phone at her. They didn't like her, basically. They threw it, and I remember managing to block just by chance, blocking that phone. If it had hit her in the head, that would have gone viral. Now, a realistic person like you would say, well, what could he really do? But there'd be other people that say security was shit.
Well, and I guess if someone's looking to recruit you in the future, that was the security there. Okay, well, not necessarily a judgment against you.
No,
but it just helps your competition get selected above you.
Yeah,
doesn't it? So
Leona Lewis, when she'd done the X Factor, or the Voice, whichever one it was, she was doing a signing somewhere, and it wasn't the job that I was on. But someone went up to say, punched her in the face. That security guard was hauled over the coals. You know, he was like, "Why were you not?" You know, he was stood probably 2 foot away, but wasn't close enough, was he? Didn't react quick enough.
I guess it's so difficult as well because you've got to anticipate the actions of idiots.
Very difficult.
I would never think to punch.
No, it's a nice, pretty girl, non-offensive.
So why would I guess you just got to anticipate.
You got to anticipate
anything, and I wouldn't even think about it.
You're constantly scanning, looking at their footwork.
Yeah.
You know, when people are queuing up to meet, you know, do they start shaking? Are they sweating? You know, why? The thing is, they're fanatical. You know, they are obsessed. You know, if this is their one opportunity in life to meet, you know, the woman of their dreams or whatever. Arnold Schwarzenegger got kicked in the back. Do you ever see that?
No.
He was at a sports event and someone ran up. He had 3 hefty scooters. Some guy ran up to him. It's on YouTube, and jumped up and kicked him in the back. Arnold kind of was like, he just wore it, and the security locked him up. Took him out. Why you do that? You know, yes, he's Arnold. He's a 70-year-old man. Why you do that? So you've got to be prepared for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Can't switch off for a second.
Not a second.
Okay. Well, Mark, thank you for answering the questions about close protection.
No worries, mate.
And if any of you've got any questions about the CP game, you want to get into it yourselves, any questions for, I would say myself, but this subject really is Mark's wheelhouse, please feel free to add into the comments.
Dan, is it something you'd be interested in, just out of curiosity? You've done security a while now.
Yeah, I've got children now.
Interesting. There you go.
I've got children.
Yeah.
If you asked me before my daughter was born, you might get a different answer. I'm not saying no, by the way, but I think we've alluded to this before in other episodes where we're kind of in the same boat, where we're looking at avenues outside of the security industry now, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think I would have been at one time.
Yeah.
I think I would have been at one time. Again, maybe.
But it's interesting that what you said there is you know, the first thing comes to your head as soon as you start thinking about doing that job, which is, you know, this high risk. Instantly you think, what have I already got here?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a daughter, wife, girlfriend, whatever, and your priorities change. This is what I say when you know, for security, doing that CP very much if you've got no commitments or loved ones, it's a lot easier to do. But you do start thinking about it more when you've got that.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I've started to come away from the doors, really.
Yeah.
Is because, I mean, when I talk about danger on the doors, it's nowhere near to the level. But there are doormen who've lost their lives, had life-changing injuries.
Yeah.
You can't take that for granted. Before my children were born, I felt I was invincible. And I'm very, very aware of my mortality now I have children. So
Yes.
I think to answer your question, no, I don't think I would be interested in close protection work now. Not that I don't think I couldn't do it.
Yeah, you'd be good at it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And, you know, that, I mean, do I want to go look after Frank Bruno? Bite your hand off. I do it for free.
Yeah. Well, this is it.
There are certain jobs I do for free.
You get the odd job like that, which you do. But,
You know, do I, you know, certain jobs I would love to do. But no, I again, when you've got children, I think it's
understandable.
Yeah. But guys, thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel, and we look forward to reading your comments. Take care. See you soon.
See you on the next episode.